Hello, my name is Michael, and welcome to this little workshop on building multi-agent systems with Google Agent Development Kit. You can connect with me at innovativeteams.net, which is my blog, and you could also find me on bluesky.social. So I help lead the Google Development Group of Central Florida, and we are passionate about helping developers at various stages connect with opportunities. And Google Development Group, helps early stage developers, maybe middle stage developers who are startup curious. And we also just help anyone who's passionate about learning. You can connect with us at googledevcentralflorida.com and consider joining our Discord and connecting with our pretty chill community. We had the opportunity to do some really awesome collaboration with the Orlando devs group of Orlando. So big high fives to our friends at ODevs. And we worked together to bring Central Florida DevFest Jam. And you can learn more about that at devfestflorida.com. And today we're just going to give you a little bit of that workshop we did at the conference. And, this is Gen Jam was a hackathon experience. And I thought I'd start off just by sharing like my story of my first hackathon experience. And it explored open source and, the power of code for positive change in your community. So my first hackathon was the National Day for Civic Hacking. It's led by this guy named Stephen Finney, really inspiring young man who gave his first year of, being out in school, out of school to working in various aspects of government. And it's kind of like Peace Corps for computer programmers. So a lot of his story connected me to Jennifer Palka and her popular TED Talk about civic hacking and the story of Code for America. And I love the quote she shares in her TED Talk from Tim O'Reilly. Government is what we choose to do together that we can't do alone. Government is what we choose together that we can't do alone. And these days, sometimes we just don't really like some of the stuff that's going on in the world. I love that software developers, with the power of open source and code, we can make a difference. Whether that's civic engagement, maybe reducing costs in our communities. You know, if you look at like city of uh, Largo, I think they save so much money, like, by encouraging good use of open source software. So there's very much a power of being a software developer and using that for positive influence. So when I participated in this hackathon with a few of my friends from the GDG of Macon, we built this thing called a Macon Business Connect, and it was a optimistic attempt to connect high schoolers with entrepreneurship, dream big, and connect them to the makers movement. So this was built with like WordPress and BuddyPress and a bunch of like clever like plugins, and it actually was a pretty good demo and story. It didn't necessarily live on and get traction, but I feel like the people behind it did something kind of cool and remarkable. That same kind of group of GGG folks, we got connected with a really cool like local government of Georgia, and they talked about how exciting it would be to have a makerspace in Macon, Georgia. And our GDG totally loved this idea, and we helped seed the first community of Spark Macon. and like we did remarkable things of getting that job done and running like something that was kind of like its own maker fair. You can see kind of down here that like we're doing some kind of, you know, playing with circuits and Arduinos sort of thing. And every other week we would do like these small parties just to try to get people engaged. It was a lot of fun. Moving to 2025, SparkMaking is still making changes in people's lives. This is pictures from their startup weekend. And so SparkMaking now has like a flavor of being an entrepreneurial connector. Additionally, keeping its root system of teaching people about like maker spaces and 3D printers and laser cutters and, you know, connecting people to code. So really super proud of the story and just kind of a witness of how software developers, you know, can use their talents as a form of volunteerism to make a difference in your community. I feel like across the, you know, startup ecosystem of Macon, these were two books that a lot of people were encouraged to read and embrace, and just want to give a shout out to those two books. So what difference do you want to make in the world? Well, that's what this hackathon is all about. And I hope you enjoy the journey. And maybe the hackathon isn't active for you, but maybe you could think about this question in your own life and what change do you want to make in the world with code. So let's look at some trends in open source agent frameworks. These are three frameworks I've enjoyed looking into. LangChain is a first mover in the industry. It is open source, lots of batteries included. If you are very comfortable with managing graph state, it's, you know, a real winner. If you're like more of an enterprise developer, you might consider checking out Semantic Kernel or Google Agent Development Kit. In my view, Google Agent Development Kit really has some great design in it, and you'll see it in real fast. All of these frameworks are kind of like evolving together, kind of like the early browser. We see in early browser days, we have great high performance JavaScript and Node.js because of the co-evolution, especially between Microsoft and Google. And you kind of see that same co-evolution amongst all the agent frameworks. They have themes though. First, they have tools. And we as humans, we love our tools. Agent tools can include things like your favorite search engine, Google, external APIs. Maybe these are enterprise APIs you've already made. Maybe you already have open API specs defined, so you can reach for those. Execution of other programs, sensors, calls to other agents, or maybe keeping the human in the loop. All of these frameworks have this concept of planning where you might challenge the large language model to make a plan of what it's about to do. You might have the opportunity to get involved with that plan and executing it. All these are, the frameworks have different opinions of how to handle that. LangChain is our batteries included framework and first mover, which has awesome access to being able to ingest PDFs, Word documents, all the common things that you would commonly reach for. If you want to connect to vector databases like Azure AI Search, Elasticsearch, or Chroma, Weaviate, great connectivity to all those things. Being able to use whatever large language model that you want. So definitely worth a look. Agent Development Kit, though, has the advantage of being concise and productive. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. So in this framework, you're empowered to create parent-child relationships between agents for delegation and specialization. You can bring your own model. So yes, Google's going to encourage you to use Gemini, but they also in the documentation show you how to connect into Claude and various others. You can deploy to any cloud, and you also have hooks to allow you to connect to other agent frameworks, or you can reach for MCP or A2A, all these kind of like ways for agents to talk to each other and collaborate. Google Agent Development Kit gives you options like Python and Java. One of the unique features I enjoy is the ADK API server. So you have a CLI command that fires up a fast API server that then you can kind of program against. And it's a fast API server. It has all the good stuff that you enjoy from a Pythonic fast API. You also have a fantastic troubleshooting experience. That's not something that you see in LangChain for sure, and really helps you from a productivity and enjoyment perspective. So the first agent we're going to look at is a simple weather calling agent. This is kind of the hello world that ADK walks you through, and we're going to try to call the weather. In this case, we'll get a response for New York, but nothing else, and we'll see why when we look at the code. So let's jump into Google Cloud and see how this all works. So here is my Google Cloud platform. You'll navigate to your Google Cloud console. Some people find this intimidating, but we'll just walk through some elements to give you a lay of the land. Over here, you have the different services you can reach for. So if you're just starting out, you might be reaching for compute and some virtual machines, right? And you have a lot of cool options here. In this land, we're going to be checking out technology called Cloud Run. And you kind of just make Docker containers and get them running in production. I really like that they have a serverless sort of character to them. So if you're getting traffic, the service stays warm and you get charged for those events. If you're not using it, it kind of like pulls itself down and you're not getting charged. So if you're very budget conscious, as most developers are, that's really cool. Up here, we have the ability to change projects. So you can see all the projects I have. If you want to create your own project, click new. Highly recommend you making your own project, remembering the name of it. And then when you're done with your learning, click, go through the process to delete your project. For those who are part of the hackathon activities, make sure to check our Discord. We have instructions there so you can get Google Cloud credits basically for free, to run all this. So make sure to check that out with those instructions. So as we continue on, we're going to jump into our CLI. We're going to explore this sample code that I put together. So Michael P. Rosario /ADK1. We're going to git clone and get that onto your computer. We'll start by setting up an environment, doing pip install requirements. At some point, we're going to need a API key to Gemini. So you're going to navigate to Google AI Studio. You're going to go to get API key and up here. You would do create API key and associated with a Google Cloud project. Again, create these projects and then delete them after you're learning. Okay, so git clone this project. In this case, I already have it. Nothing too exciting there. If we open up this with this editor, this is really cool. I have Visual Studio Code. That's really cool that you can have that inside your Google Cloud. So let's say we're checking out the README here. I can kind of just walk step by step and, get through this kind of workshop quickly. So in this case, I already have my environment already set up. I can do pip install -requirements.txt. I need to go into this ADK1 folder to actually proceed with that. Pip install -requirements.txt. Again, get your API key. We would set some environment variables to what's appropriate for our situation. And the last step we're going to do is we're going to go into our agents folder. You can see we have a variety of agents just for your demo and learning. We're going to focus on the blogger, job cover letter drafter, and weather. So let's run this. ADK web. Okay, we can see it's running on port 8000. Let's go down to blogger, no, down to weather. What is the weather like in New York? Okay, so it's saying that's a valid response. What is the weather like on Naboo? It's going to say, I don't know, because that's not a real thing. Well, not really. It's actually, let's look at the code. Down in weather, under agent, you set up your agent starting off declaring its name, the model, and prompting to get work done. On line 66, we see that we have two tools called get weather and get current time. These are just simple Python functions, which is kind of nice. So it takes the input string as a city and returns a dictionary. And that's it. Really, really nice and simple. If the string is New York, we would return a valid response. Otherwise, we just throw an error. So let's look at that more interesting advanced scenario with a blogger. So let's go back to slides real fast. This is going to be a scenario where we're using a sequential agent. Previously, we saw the use of a straight LLM agent where we can invoke tools and whatnot. In a workflow agent, work starts, sequentially. So in this case, we're going to write a blog post. There's going to be second step for revision and, write the blog post, then do a review of that blog post, and then we'll do a revision. So let's see how that looks. Write a blog post about the history of Star Wars. I kind of find the title very, very funny. And here we could see the critic agent is making some recommendations of how to make the content better, and it's going to kind of like finish off with even more revisions. We can further kind of like drill into each of these invocations and see what was kind of going on, like what was the request, what was the response, and other kind of places we can even think about the timings. I wanted to make sure to clarify how deployment works. So we're here at google.github.io/adk-docs. Let's drill into the module here for deployment. You can see you have several options: Agent Engine, Cloud Run, and Google Kubernetes Engine. We're going to drill into Cloud Run. And under this, you have kind of several options to think about. So let's just like go through this flow, make sure it's understood. So under the Python scenario, you are, of course, making sure that your agent is completely filled out in a similar way as you've kind of seen in our source code. You have to make sure that you have a requirements.txt to declare your dependencies. Here, you're going to declare your different environment variables. So what Google Cloud project are you working on, what region you want to connect to. In my case, I've been using this case of not using Vertex AI, and I plug in my Google API key. So recommend trying to go down that path for simplicity. When you do a deployment, going down this path, we're going not the ADK CLI path, the Python gcloud CLI path. The reason I'm recommending this is this gives you access to the lower level files, including the Docker file. You can kind of have more control over your requirements.txt and the fast API that gets defined. And this tutorial takes you down and explores how to set up the fast API. And because you have access to the source code, you can customize this for your particular application. You have access to the requirements files, and you can add your own dependencies. And here you have access to the Docker file and everything. So when we run Google Cloud, run deploy our service using the source region project, that kicks off the container building process. I want to especially call out how this folder structure is laid out. Under your project structure, here's like the list of agents. That's your agent py under that agent folder. And your main requirements and Docker file are on the same level as this agent or agents. So I'm kind of in the middle of that process right now, so you can kind of see that it's looks something like this. Going to search for cloud build. And by invoking that command, I have a build kind of cooking, and we could see the status of my container. And the container again is just like a executable that runs on the cloud.